Now let's take this page to the next level and display the image of each product in the shopping cart. So back in our template, I'm going to add a new column here, one in the heading. Now, for some reason, my VS Code is not working properly. Anyway, so let's move on. Here in the body section, I'm also going to add a TD. Inside this, we're going to have an image like this. And finally, we should also add another column in the footer. So I'm going to simply duplicate this line. All right. Now, let's work on this image. I'm going to bind the source property to item.image URL. Also, I'm going to apply a class here, a custom class. Let's call this thumbnail. Now let's go to the CSS file for this component and define this class. So shopping cart.css. So here's my thumbnail class. I'm going to set the width to 80 pixels. Same for the height, and border radius to 100% to make it look round. Now let's take a look at the result. So this is what we get, but if you pay close attention, you can see some of these images are out of proportion. Let me zoom in. Look at this tomato image. It looks a little bit squashed. The reason for this is because our original images, they come in different dimensions. So we can take that original image and resize it to a square like this. But we have a workaround for that. Let me show you. So back in the template, instead of this image, I'm going to use a div. A div. Let's close it here. We don't need the alt. Now here, instead of the source property, I'm going to set style.background image. So I'm going to set the background image of this div, and then in CSS, I'm going to add another property, background size cover. With this attribute, we can resize an image without losing its aspect ratio. So our image will not look squashed, okay? Now, one last thing before we finish this. Here, when binding the style, that background image property, we need to set a URL. So in our binding expression, we should have something like this. A string URL with open parentheses. We'll concatenate that with item.image URL, and then with another string to close the parentheses. Now, let's take a look. So this is what we get. Note that our tomatoes are no longer squashed.